Well, welcome everyone to August 11th, 2020. We are in the kitchen with Alex Kunevicius, who is 101 years old.
Yeah, that's correct.
And we're going to have an incredible journey as we talk a little bit about his life, his time in the military, and a little bit of his creativity as an inventor, as well as an author, and some of the other things that you've been doing. But for those who are joining, if you share this video, and if you're looking at it, there should be a little share button on the bottom corner. If you share this video, next week we're going to draw names from, and everybody who shares will be in the drawing, and you'll have an opportunity to win this autographed copy, because Alex signed this copy right before we pressed the button. You'll get this autographed copy with the date today, commemorating 101 years old. Those of you who watched last week, we had stuntman and former pro wrestler Chris Hahn join, and we had a number of shares last week, and so we're going to give away autographed copies of his stuff. So I'm going to reach over there. Beth, if I reach over, will you? There's some Sharpies in there, but
I'll use sticky paper.
Yes, I need two. We can pull out one, and we'll announce the winner. So winner number one.
Fergan Mayer.
Thank you. We'll put that off here as
Sharing. Congratulations.
Yep. And winner number two.
Tom Klein.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you both for sharing. We'll get these autographed stills of Chris Hahn in the mail. It was an incredible interview last week. Chris was a guy who he was a pro wrestler. He got thrown out of the ring, ended up finding out he had a brain tumor. Had his brain tumor removed, and he couldn't wrestle anymore, and so he moved into a movie actor, and with doing a lot of stunts because he had a lot of that capability. But if you haven't seen that, go back and check that out. But Chris, and thank you for interviewing with us last week. I'm going to actually move these aside. Beth, can you see these? Are they out of the way?
They are.
Okay. Well, today we're here, and we're actually in the kitchen. And I love these intimate settings because it feels natural. And we're here, and we're surrounded by family. This is probably the most folks that we've had watching live ever, and that's exciting for me. But Alex, you said before, you confirmed that you were 101 years old.
Yeah, I was born 1919, June 4th, 1919. That makes me 101. 101.
Yeah. As we are in 2020 right now, we're dealing with the pandemic. 100 years ago, 1918 and 1919 was the last worldwide pandemic.
In fact, that affected some of my family. My mother's brother was living in Pittsburgh when we lived in Pittsburgh, and his wife and two daughters. His wife and one daughter died from that epidemic. He had three boys and one daughter left. His wife was dead, so he took the three boys, and he wanted to take the girl too to go to Europe. The girl didn't want to go, so he took his three sons and went back to Europe because he said they were small. And the boys grew up. They were all here. In fact, they came back. They lived in Lithuania, and then they grew up. They came back to the United States. Joseph, Walter, and Ralph. Joe wound up to be a Marine. He was in Germany. He was wounded by shrapnel. Walter was a Marine also. He was in the South Pacific. His arm almost got shot off, and Ralph was married, so he didn't go into this. So the three boys came back. That was on my mother's side, and I don't know what else I could tell you
Well,
about that.
but I tell you what, there's not many people who can reflect back and have a direct experience with the
Yeah.
pandemic from 1918 and 1919 when that
yeah,
happened.
Yeah.
I had read someplace that pandemic had killed more people than were killed in World War I. And so that
Yes.
was quite a crisis. As you folks are watching, what we're going to do is, we know that questions are going to come up, and if you're participating live, feel free to shoot those out, and we'll stop every once in a while and get to those. Alex, you were born in Pittsburgh.
I was born in Pittsburgh, on the south side of Pittsburgh, which where the big steel mills and stuff were. There was a very large group of Lithuanian people that lived through that area. My father was a businessman. He owned a movie theater, as I said, the Liberty Theater, and he owned either 2 or 3 big pool rooms. He had people working for him. So you could never see my father because he was always too busy. And so I kind of grew up in that area. I went to a school, it was a Catholic school, a church called St. Casimir's. And there was a school there, so I went to school there, and I think I was in the 3rd grade when my parents went back to Europe. My dad, my mother, and my sister, we went to Europe because my father's father owned land, and he was giving that land away to people that did something for him. He was old. And so by the time we got there, he was dead, and my father took over the land and whatever. So we had a horse ranch. I went to a Jesuit school. I was entered into a Jesuit school. They have our grandma's in their school. The grandma's school is 4 grades. High school is 8 classes. They made me take a test, and I went into the 2nd class of this 8 class gymnasium. It was the Jesuits. The Jesuits got there in about the 14th or 15th century. Most of the Jesuits were there. Their background was German, because they came from Prussia, and so a lot of the priests that I knew are German descent. Germany was a language that you had to take. It was mandatory. You had to take it in school, and I took it. I was there for 6 years. I graduated in 1936, and
He talks too much. He talks too much.
I graduated in 1936, and my father asked me if I wanted to go back to the United States. And he said, you can stay here till you're 21, because the Army would probably take you, then you'd become a Lithuanian citizen. If not, you'd go back to the United States. And I said, well, my friends are here now, I might as well stay for a while, you know. So I stayed there. I wanted to go to an agricultural school, which was very close to where we had a horse ranch, and he didn't let me go there. I had to go to a pre-college school. And when I went there, the Jesuits had only boys. There was no girls in that school. Well, when I went to that pre-college school, there was girls, boys. I wasn't used to it. I didn't even like it, you know, because it was just different. And but it was 1936 when I entered, and by December or the end of November, I received a letter from my father. He says, come on home, get your things. We're going back to the United States. December 5th, we're leaving. And I said, well, gee, my father must be going crazy, you know. But I came back, I went home, and my father said, there's going to be a war, because we used to hear Hitler on the Shortwave Radio, and there's going to be a war. It's not good. We're going back to the United States.
So you're in Lithuania.
I was in Lithuania.
You graduated high school in 1936. You started to do that study and moving in the agricultural, and your father says, we're picking up the family, we're going back to the United States.
Yeah.
There's going to be a war.
Yeah. My father would listen to the we had a shortwave radio and with the wires and all that. And he knew I'd listen to Hitler. I could already, because I understood German. Oh, German was mandatory. A lot of the people in Lithuania talked German because we're right next door to each other. There were businesses right next, all that. So I forgot what I was going to say.
So you were hearing Hitler on the shortwave radio and understanding the propaganda that he was
My
delivering.
father finally said, there's going to be a war, for sure. We're leaving. And we left the horse ranch, everything, the people that worked there. He turned over the horse ranch to two of my aunts, my mother's sisters. One is a doctor, and one was a school teacher. Both of them were widows. No, not widows. They were not married. My aunt was a teacher. I really loved her. The one that was a doctor, I didn't like her because she was the old one. She was a real mandatory. She would make me sit at a table and read a Bible. And I read it out loud because she wanted to make sure that I was reading it, And I had to do that. So I didn't like her. And but they left the horse ranch to them. But when the war started, the Russians came, the communists. They threw them out of the horse ranch. They just threw them out. In fact, my aunt that had the little office, a doctor, they threw her out of her little. Why? Why would they do that? That's how bad the Russians were, the communists, and they took over Lithuania before the Germans came again, and it was a disaster over there. But we came back, we left them there. We came back here. My father, that was 1936. My father bought a rooming house. A mansion on 73rd and Euclid Avenue. There were big mansions because he was in the real estate too. He did everything. And so he bought that, and we had this big rooming house. And that's where I was 17 years old. And he would buy other buildings, houses like that. And he was real handy. He had a guy working for him. And they would put me to work there. So I started getting where I was doing all kinds of work in the house. And my father, I remember this for sure. My father said one time, he said, Alex, God gave you golden hands. You can do anything you want in the whole world. My father was that clever. And I said, yeah, I guess I could, I'm pretty good. It seemed like any time I was doing something, I'd find a way to do it easier, something. So my father saw that. And I could do almost anything. I could do electric work. He said, don't touch the two wires. You can do anything you want, don't touch it. Yeah. And so that was my education, yeah. So I could do almost anything with my hands. That was the truth.
So you could fix things,
fix
replace
anything
things,
there was, anything that came along, I could fix anything. You name it, I'll do it. That was that's what I could do. Somehow, somehow. And so I was working for him from the 30s till I was 21. My mother gave me money to buy a car. I think it was a 1939 Ford, And a guy told me that some gamblers were going after him. He needs $50 for that car. So I went and I tried to beg my mother to buy that car. And she said, okay. She was a very good negotiator. She said, I'll give him $40. Bought that car. So I had a Ford I was riding around in. I could drive around. Went downtown, got a license for 40 cents, or 40 or 50 cents, you got a license. So I'm driving a car. And I did that work all the way to the time that the draft came in. I got a beautiful letter from President Roosevelt. You are now drafted for 1 year. You're going to be in the Army for 1 year, and whatever you're going to serve. So March 5th, 1941, March 5, 1941, I entered the Army, went and got a physical, and I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky, and I stayed there for about 3 months, I think. Got the training. We were training with walking back and forth. After the training, an officer was sitting at a table, and you went up there and he interviewed you. Well, Fort Knox, Kentucky had the 1st Armors Division, tanks and all. Everybody that was like me, we're going to get into that tank division, Boy, I'm going to ride a tank. And so when we got interviewed, I'm telling the officer, I can do anything, I'll drive that thing, I'll fix it, I'll do that. When he got done, they put me into 22nd Ordnance Company. I said, Ordnance Company? What am I going to do? You're going to fix it.
You're going to fix things.
So I didn't get to get it, where I wanted to go into the tanks. I was going to be a tanker. They had short pants and stuff. Boy, I'm going to be one of those. It never happened. I got in, 22nd Ordnance. It was a small 120 troops, and I spent 4.5 years in that. That was also the book, that ordnance book. Yeah, almost everything that I could remember is probably in there. But because first, maybe it's the good Lord or whatever, somehow one man said, it can't be, one guy said, it can't be that Alex, that guy there, can do anything. It can't. Somehow it got to the thing that whatever has to be done, Alex
Alex, do it.
Yeah, and so I got to the point where I traveled all over. I went to 7 different islands, all over. But when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, I was already in the Army for about 9 months, from March to December 7th, and right away our organization, my company got involved in, on the ship going overseas. We wound up in Caledonia. From Caledonia, we were there for a while. They were bringing in troops and getting organized, I guess, to go fight the Japanese. We were in the South Pacific. It took us 54 days from New York through the Panama Canal, all the way to Australia, from Australia to Caledonia. We were there for a while. And then the first place that we went to was Guadalcanal. The first Marines went into Guadalcanal, and we went into Guadalcanal. There was 120 guys in my outfit. The ships that went in, only 10 of us out of my outfit got off the ship. The bombers were so bad, the Japanese were so tough that our ships left. So that 10 of us from my outfit, that's all, plus, with the Marines, we were attached to the Marines. and our ships left because the Japanese were that bad.
So they dropped you off.
Yeah.
You're 10 fix-it guys, and Alex can fix everything.
Yeah.
And you're supporting those troops on the front lines.
Yeah, we're
fixing
guns and stuff.
guns.
But that was, as we went in, we were on the beaches and had to get in. So the Marines were all into. You had to get in out of the bushes. You don't say on the Marines because on the beach, because of the airplanes, Japanese were strafing, and so you had to get off right away as soon as you get off. So we get into the bushes, and then we got attached to the 1st Marine Division. There's only 10 of us out of my company. And what were we doing? We were fixing guns. And the Marines were really good. They were really treated us so good. I even had Marine clothes on because our clothes were all dirty and stuff. So I had Marine clothes. And we're walking through the bushes, and I see a thing that looks like a front end of a truck. And I got the bushes away and looked. I said, gee, there's a truck, a flatbed. Maybe it was a 1920 or something, one of those old ones over there. And I said, well, I'm going to go get that. The guy said, don't go, Alex, because it's probably dynamited.
Booby trapped, right?
Yeah. So we went and we looked around, and we got that truck, and we used to use that the bedding, to fix guns. It was like a table, So we were working there. About maybe 3 weeks later, the boats came back with our company, and our company came in, and all of them had, they came there. We built a whole camp. We had trucks that looked like buses, and that was all parts and where you could work with it. Yeah, and I had one of those that I was driving. It was really good for me. And so we were on Guadalcanal. From Guadalcanal, we went to Savo Island, to New Georgia. As we were going into New Georgia, also in invasion, they were landing. As they were landing, also the airplanes. The Japanese had so many planes. It was so bad that our company that was on a boat with all our equipment, we landed on a little island called Sassaville. There was nothing there. That was a dense island. As we were getting off the what they call Higgins boat with our trucks, we tried to find a place to get in. You had to get off the beach. I found an area, it was open, and I went right into that thing with that truck. Boy, it was really nice, We stayed there for about, maybe 2 weeks, till the Marines got the New Georgia island pretty good. It was one of the Solomon Islands. And then we went from there to the Red Island, set up camp. There was a runway there, and where the airplanes would stand, our airplanes already, and then we would stay there right next to that airport. So the bombing, that number,
585.
we were bombed on Guadalcanal the same way. We were right next to the runways because there was a runway there. And so the Japs would come in and bomb the runways. Well, we were right there. When we went to New Georgia, that's the next island up, the same way. We're right on the runway. So every bombing, we were in the bombing. And they would bomb every night, sometimes 2 times. And that was one way. Again, there was an officer, a Jewish guy. His name was Benny Rabin. He was an officer. somehow he really took to me. I mean, he really, whatever I wanted, he would do for, whatever I had to have. But he was the guy too that anything had to be done, I was going to do it. But he would be there too. He and I got one time stuck in a little river, and the Japanese were shooting at us. I'm behind one wheel and he's behind the other wheel. He's in the water and I'm not. So he was a real good. But he would, anywhere they wanted me, they would send me. Go get Alex. He'll do that. And 2 rides on an airplane that never landed. Once we flew into a place where my cousin was, called an island called Villa La Villa. He was in the Marines, and somehow they said, "Alex, you're going to go to the Villa La Villa for something, and you're going to fly." Got behind one of our airplanes, behind a seat. I'm sitting there holding on. When we got to Villa La Villa, when he was going to land, the Japanese had taken, somehow they retook the
airstrip,
the runway.
Yeah, okay.
So that airplane turned around and, I almost fell over holding on. And another time they flew me to a little island on a plane that had, they could land in water. But when they got there, that water was so rough to where he wanted to land, we didn't land there either. So we came back. So twice, something like that happened. What else can I tell you?
Did you ever get that truck running that you, did you ever pull that truck out of that that
yeah.
thicket?
Yeah. A good friend of mine, his name was Ralph Clark, my buddy. I had a couple of buddies that really, she knew him too. When we came back, luckily, one of them saved my life. Anyhow, she's all right. When we went to that Villa La Villa, couldn't land, so a couple of times I was on an airplane. There's other times that went by boat. We went to islands where there was a priest there. He was a French priest. He didn't even know that France had fallen. The Polynesian people were there. Beautiful, beautiful people. There was about maybe 10 of us on a boat, the captain that took us there. The men dig a big hole, put fish in, put some leaves in, and made a fire. And so we're eating. And there's a bunch of girls, we see these girls, they were such beautiful girls. When evening fell, somebody took the girls and took them away. So we left. We left that island. That was a really nice place.
So we have, so people are watching this live, and there's going to be people that are going to watch this in the future. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. I know that there's probably folks that are just listening.
Yeah, well, the Solomon Island, I was on 7 different islands. Kulumbangera. Oh, the next island, one day, one of the officers said to me, "Tonight, we are going to go," there's only about 3 or 4 guys are going on a Higgins boat because they're going to attack Kulumbangera. That's the next island. I said, right, that was not a good thing. But anyhow, we go. When we went into Kulumbangera early in the morning, the Australian Army,
The brigades or whatever,
yeah, they were Australian, went in first. And there was some shooting, and all of a sudden it stopped. I said, gee, what happened? The Japanese must have known somehow. They left. There was no Japanese.
Japanese there.
Yeah. So yeah, we went there, and so we got off the boat. Walked around. The Japanese had such a beautiful. There was a volcano island. They had caves built, but around the caves, the doors were carved beautifully. Somebody did that, so it was done quite a while ago. They had a record machine with American records on it. Was there? It was just the Japanese must have had a good, yeah.
And you said that somebody from your company saved your life. Is that right?
Yes. Jimmy Birdie is his name. My wife knows him real good because he was lucky to come back with me. This is on Guadalcanal. When once in a while we had to go we would have maybe 4 or 5 or 10 machine guns on this little truck that we had. And then we would go into the bushes where the guys were and would give them the guns and get out. There was a little path there. So we delivered some guns and we were going back. My buddy was driving. There was a guy sitting in the middle and I was sitting by the door. And as we were driving, there was an ambulance going right behind us. A Japanese plane came over and strafed, but he over-strafed, and he strafed over where you could see the
shrapnel and
shots going on the water. So when my buddy saw that, he took the truck and just went to the side, and we went down a ravine. And as we were going, I must have hit my arm to the door opener, and I flew out of the truck. And either the wheel or something caught me, and I went down and down and down. And when I got up, must have been something happened to me. I start running, like, the ambulance that was behind us also stopped, They caught me, and they take me to the first aid real fast. My back was kind of hurt. I must have hurt my back. And if I'd have had any blood there, it'd have had a purple heart, but it didn't have no blood. Didn't have no blood. And but that very night, where we had our tent, where we were on Guadalcanal, had our tent, we had our foxholes there, and they would bomb us every night. So apparently we were sitting they were bombing us at night, and I was sitting on the edge of the foxhole, and as they saw the airplanes coming in and the bombers started, I was just sitting there, and my buddy grabbed me and pulled me into the hole. 4 bombs went right along, maybe 20 feet away, blew away our tent, did everything. If I'd have been sitting there, I'd have been dead, yeah. So he changed my life. He was my buddy, the best buddy I ever had, yeah. Jimmy Birdie. Got married 3 times, and every wife died for him when he come back. Yeah. She knows him real well. Ma, are you okay?
She's okay.
She okay?
Yeah, she's okay.
We are talking with Alex Kunevicius. He's a Centenarion, 101 years old, and he's reflecting back to life at World War II.
1941 to 46.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody who shares this interview, next week you'll be put in a drawing and you'll have the opportunity to win an autographed copy of Alex's book. Beth will pull that up there. The stories, I am engaged in your storytelling, first of all, because they're historically interesting, and because your descriptions are so well. And I've read this book as well, and I love the stories. Tell me about writing the book, right? I mean, nobody wanted these stories, we wanted these stories to be available to everybody. How did the book writing, how did that happen?
I think I was in my 80s when I wrote it. Even today, there are times that when I'm by myself or I'm laying down, some thoughts come that from God knows where. Why they do that, I don't know. Why this came on, apparently I just wanted to tell somebody, what the war was about.
Yeah.
Why we have that flag. I have a flag over here on a floor. Anybody touch it, I'll shoot them.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's the way I am.
Yeah.
Because, so I don't know. I just maybe wanted to get it off of my chest that here's what I did maybe. Like my father said, you had golden hands, do something with them.
So your golden hands picked up a pen? Yeah, Kelly, jump in.
I'll chime in. I would say this is not the first thing you've written, that you've written plays and that you always knew you wanted to write some books. And,
but that goes back. That goes back. When we came back to the United States and living in that great big mansion, there's a desk down the basement that the parents bought it for me, and I was sitting there and I was going to write books. I wanted to be a book writer, and I wrote some stories. And there was a magazine called, I think, The Liberty, and I would send a story in, but it was never published. And besides, I was probably the worst speller. Because I took English, in Europe, I took English. I could talk English. English was my language. But my writing was probably, I didn't have Kelly there. Yeah, so.
So you picked up a pen, right? Was it longhand that you wrote this book?
Loose leaf paper.
Loose leaf paper. Mm-hmm. And.
Yeah, when I wrote it, most of the time I wrote it handwriting. I would write the whole thing and Kelly would type it all out, and so we were going like that, yeah. And a friend of mine, I used to speak when I came back after the company that I had, 22nd, the ordnance company, the automobile molding company, a man that used to listen to me speak, and I spoke many times, many areas, and said, gee, Alex, send your book. If you write a book, send it to so-and-so. They took it and published it, yeah.
And published it.
Yeah.
Well, we are benefactors. Not only have I read this, but I was trying to get a copy to give away today, and they were in the process of reprinting. So the only copy I could get myself was from a library. So this came out of, was it Northbrook Library? And so we are anxious to gift this off to a winner next week. I understand you also have done some inventing. And I read on the back here that you also did some inventing.
Well, when I came back from the service, I have to go through maybe. Can I tell about her?
Well, absolutely.
I was discharged July 29th, 1946. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 46. I was in the Army 4.5 years. And when I came back, my first furlough that I came home, I got malaria at home. All of a sudden I got cold, then hot. And my mother was lucky enough, she called her own doctor. The doctor says, call the Army. They came right there and took me here to Brecksville. It was a hospital.
The Veterans
there.
Hospital there?
Yeah. And that's where I was. So I was in there for 2 weeks. The reason I got malaria was when I came back, we used to take a little pill every day. Well, when I was on a boat coming back, no more pills. So by the time I came home, there's that little, some of the mortgage. When I came home, I got the malaria. I didn't know it. So I had malaria about, maybe 10 times, but each time it got lesser and lesser and lesser and lesser. Just sitting, you got cold and a little warm, but it's over. But the first time was really bad. I remember laying in bed and looking at the ceiling in a hospital, and I could see the ceiling going round and round. And I said, "Wow, that's so beautiful." And the doctor said to the nurse, "He's delirious." I can remember that.
So you came back from the Pacific Islands and you caught malaria here, right? Probably just from the absence of taking them.
I quit taking those
System,
pills.
yeah.
So I got malaria. But each time you got it, it got less and less severe.
Yeah.
So I think I haven't had it for a long time. It just went away.
Just went away.
Yeah.
We see some things here because some of your inventing.
Yeah, those are the inventions, yeah.
Yeah? Can you tell us about these?
Well, let me tell you one more story before I go into that.
Oh, yes,
one.
please do.
When I came home, I was discharged July 29, 1946, and came home. I was interviewed. That's another story. Special service. I come home. I remember coming home on a Saturday. Oh, and when I came home from overseas, my father bought a Studebaker car from a lady for $1,000. It was used, so I had a car. And when I come home, it was a Saturday. Next Saturday, some of the buddies that were here before me, my buddy that saved my life, another guy, Joe Bargale was a real good friend of mine. We went down to 105th and Euclid. That was called Little Hollywood. They had movie theaters there, restaurants, bars, the whole thing. Everybody went there. You know, I already had a suit that I bought, a civilian, and I went there with my buddies, and I'm sitting at the bar, and we're having a good time. The place is full of Army guys, Navy guys are there, and here comes the door. As we're sitting by the bar, the door opened and comes two waves, Navy women waves, and two guys, and they're coming by, and they had to come right by where we're sitting. And I looked and I see this one blonde hair, and I grabbed her hand, and I said, "Now that I found you, I'll never let you go." And they all looked at me. Boy, they said, "This guy must be nuts," And she kind of pulled away her arm away from me, but they looked, and they went and sat down. And I'm sitting there with my buddies, and I'm looking over that way, and I see her, and I said, "You know what?" To my buddies, I said, "I'm going to go and get that girl." And I said, "Hey, those two guys are going to beat the hell out of you." Yeah. And I went over there, and what I said, I really don't know. I don't know what I told her, and she can't remember either. But she walked out of that place with me. I took her away from that table, from those people. There was her girlfriend and her, and two guys, they were Canadians. The Canadians probably didn't beat me because they probably knew the American Army was
Back you up.
So I was probably lucky. But I had that little Studebaker, and I took her back. They stayed at the hotel on 30th and Chester. That's where the Navy guys, girls were, and that's where she was. But that's how I met her.
That's how you met, and you took her hand, and you never let it go.
I never let her go. And 75 years later.
Congratulations.
73 years, yeah. She's 98. She was 3 years younger than me.
Wow. Well, it is amazing to hear those stories.
I took her, we went back to where hotel was, I couldn't go in there. So she had to be there like 12 o'clock. So I took her back, and I think her girlfriend was with us. And I tried to kiss her. She was laughing, so I kissed her teeth. That was the first kiss. Yeah, and she went, yeah, so that was, and right about a week later was when armistice was, the war was over, everything was over, yeah. And I remember going and picking her up, and we were riding all over the city, with because people were celebrating and all that. So we started going together and
Drove that Studebaker around, right?
yeah. And she stayed in the service for another like a year and a half almost, and we got married when she got out of the service. Wow. Yeah, she said to me, "Either you'll marry me or else." So that was our engagement. But we did get engaged. I took her. I'm a Catholic, and I was brought up in a Jesuit school, So I took her to a church in Akron. She's from Akron, Ohio. I took her to the church, and I gave her the ring right in front of the altar, Blessed Virgin, and that was
your engagement.
And we had she was one of the best wives that a man could have for a guy like me, because I was never here. I was always gone. I mean, I traveled the world. Everything was going on. And she raised the kids till she was born, 1979. The merger was over because I had a company, and she was little, and I started coming home, more often. But she traveled all over the world too with me. I traveled the world. There's not a place in the world. Japan, they wanted me to go to Japan. I didn't have the heart to go to Japan. Somehow,
That was
because
you passed on. Yeah,
they threw too many bombs at me.
Yeah. Well, your story is amazing. We understand you invented. Was it?
How many patents?
How many patents? Because in addition
15,
to
20?
how many patents do you have?
Altogether, that patent there was on the moldings. But then when I established the company that I had, there must have been about 5 or 6 different ways that we were doing things. So I was getting a patent. So most of those are in my name. For whatever reason, not that I wanted it, just Alex, I had them all. But I had 2 patents. I had a bowling alley that I bought. My father told me not to. I bought before that, and I had 2 patents there. I made a bowling ball grip that's movable, and then the thing that put on your leg. So I had 2 patents there, and probably about 5 or 6 over here. So maybe 7 or 8 patents.
7 or 8 patents.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But even that's not true. There's one that was not a patent. When I went to the high school in Kaunas, Lithuania, the Jesuit school, I don't know, it was either the last year or the year before, maybe I was pretty up already. One day, we had a bunch of priests. The priests would come and go. You'd see these bunch of priests would be there for a while. They'd be gone. Another group would come in. A lot of them German descent, the Germans. Mm-hmm. And so one day, I'm playing in the yard with a ball, and we were doing something. One of the brothers, not a priest, he was a brother, he's got a great big trash thing, and he's trying to move this trash thing, and he's having a hard time. So I left the ball and I went over there. I said, can I help you? Yeah, and I'm helping him with pulling this stuff, and some stuff is falling out of that crater. They were doing something inside a building. And I'm looking down, there's a little piece of pipe, a little tiny piece of pipe, maybe 1/4 inch, like a little tube.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I picked it up. Instead of throwing it away, I put it in my pocket. Why? I never will know. I helped them put that thing away, and maybe a couple of days later, I don't really remember when, but what I did, the convent was built in the 16th century. Enormous church, the high school, where they lived, a 3-story building, a whole block long. That's our school was enormous. They had walkways in there that you couldn't find, that I could find. There was doors that you couldn't go in, had no knob. A priest had a key that would go open the door and go in, and any door that you could not, where a pupil can go, had no knob. Okay. I took that little tube, and I made myself a key. That was my first invention. And I could go and open any door I want to. I'm walking around there. I found tunnels that I don't think the priests knew were there. So help me. Yeah, because that was built in the 16th. Yeah. There were tunnels there. I was not a big guy. I had to go sideways to go up the steps, like maybe that narrow, yeah. And I'd go up to the steeple, 2 steeples up there. I'd go up there and smoke my cigarette. Smoke my cigarettes up there. I was always doing something bad, you know. Yeah, I always had a way. So I made that key, and I had it for quite a time. We would go, as we come out of our bedrooms down to the stairs, there was a big door that you went right into the church, but it had one of those keys. Once you go into the church, if there's no priest around, you can go out to the outside door and go out into the streets and walk around the streets, you know. So that was a way for us to get around. And I had that key for quite a while. And one day, I'm trying to open a door to go into the church so I could go out to the side. My buddies are there with me, a couple of buddies, and somebody's tapping me on the shoulder, and my key is not working. And somebody's tapping me, you know, I turn around, and it's a priest. Give me it, and I hand it to him. And I think it was the year before I graduated, and I think my mother had to come to save me. I think they were going to throw me out of school, yeah. And there was about maybe out of maybe 300 kids that went to that school, about 75 lived there like me, lived there with, you know, in the convent. Yep. Yeah. And I want to forget what I was going to go. Isn't that something?
That's right, because it may come back. I know that there's probably folks watching, maybe some questions that come up. For those who share this interview next week, we'll be giving away an autographed copy of Alex's book. The descriptions are great. I love that there's some black and white photos here, which helps take us back to those times.
Yeah.
And in addition, I mean, Alex, you are a man with. I'm sorry? Oh yeah, we'll bring it up a little closer.
No, do you want me to plug the phone in? I don't know how you're.
Yeah. Why don't you plug that in? But Alex, you are a man with golden hands, because not only were you an author, an inventor, watercolor artist.
Oh.
Is that right?
Oh,
so you watercolor paintings?
Oh, yeah. I had in school.
You see that?
Or the school, in school, the guy that was our teacher was not a priest. He was a civilian. He was a real good teacher, and he would put up an item on a table, and you would have to draw it, or he would put up a picture, and you'd have to draw it. He told my mother, he says, when Alex fixes school, send him to Paris to go to some kind of school. I never, but yeah, these were, yeah.
The watercolors.
Oh yeah, watercolor. I had oil too, but I preferred because it's easier. Oil is a messy thing. It's good, but it's a messy thing. And so I like watercolor the best. You could do anything you want. You can ruin it and fix it and all that. Yeah. So it was good. Art was. I liked art.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us this matinee. We're going to replay it tonight. You can watch it anytime. We'll also upload it to YouTube, so folks want to look at this at a later time. You can look at it and listen to it. And enjoy those stories a second time and a third time because they're great stories. This is a man with golden hands, Alex Kunevicius.
Yeah.
101 years old, a centurion, and it is my honor to interview you, and I want to thank you for your service.
Yeah, I thank you.
What do you have to share with us?
I want to tell you one more thing that really made me happy.
Mm-hmm.
My mother and father died at 93. My father was 10 years older than her. My mother called me one day, here I was somewhere, and she says, Pa's not feeling good, come on over, take a look. I went over there, I'm glad I went over there, and he was sitting on the couch, and he had his clothes on, and I took his hand, and his hand was ice cold. Ice cold. I said, Pa, your hand is ice cold. And he said, yeah, something. He only had 2 conversations, business and politics. He was a Republican. I am too. And I'm holding his hand, and all of a sudden he took a deep breath, and he put his head down, and he died. And I was holding his hand. And I really, because he was probably a lot to do with my life. He said, you got golden hands. Everything you touch is going to turn to gold, and it did. And
what a great influence.
I was holding his hand. Yeah.
What advice do you have for us youngsters out there?
Live your life to the fullest. Enjoy your life. Life is a gift. I don't know if you're religious or not, but I believe that the good Lord did something, for the people. Live your life, live to the fullest. Don't do things that are wrong. I did too many of them. But, that's it. That would be my thing. Live it. Enjoy it. It's here. And time goes by so fast. How did 100 years just gone?
Yeah.
Just gone. My memory is very, very good because there's a lot of times we're laying down in bed, before I fall asleep. I can remember things that it seemed like I was, 5 years old, and I can remember what I did. How did I do that? Yeah.
Well, Alex, in closing, thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you for taking the time to document your experience back in the Second World War.
Yeah.
And thank you for interviewing with us today. It's been a pleasure to sit here around your kitchen table and be treated like family. I do appreciate it.
I think I didn't tell you one thing, how my invention came on the moldings.
Well, we have all the time in the world. Please tell us how that happened. So it was your invention?
Yeah. You know how it came about?
I have no idea. So these are
just different parts, different Chevrolet, different companies that we were making them for all different companies, you know. So you could tell that they're different. Whatever they wanted, we made it. But the way this came about, the way it came about, and I don't remember why, but we bought a first rooming house when we were already pretty well settled. Yeah, I found an ad in the paper. A company, a Pontiac dealer, was looking for a salesman, and it was on the east west side of Cleveland. So I went over there and walked into the dealership. It was Tony Dietz Pontiac, and I walked up. There was a manager was standing there. And I said, I saw this ad in the paper for a salesman. I'd like to, interview. And he said, sit down over there and fill out that paper. And I said, if you want to just ask me anything you want, I'll tell you. He said, sit down over there. And I said, no. I'm not going to fill the paper. I said, anybody. So I turned around, I'm going. A man's voice from somewhere said, hey, hold him, hire that guy. the owner of the dealership said, stop him, hire him. So the sales manager said, hey you. I turned around. He said, you're hired. I got a job. And he said, you ever sell cars? No. He said, you want to sell used cars? I said, I don't care. Said, across the street, they had a lot, a used car lot. He said, when can you start? I said, I'll start right now. They took me across the street, and a man there by the name of Eddie Johnson was a man he had a bad arm, but he was a good salesman, and he was really teaching me. He taught me how to sell cars. So I'm a car salesman. But it was 90th and Lorraine Avenue. We were living on 84th Street on the east side. It was real far. So one day, somebody told me about another dealership that was close, that once by us, needed a salesman. I went there and I got a job there selling Oldsmobiles. And that was, I figured that was the thing. In the meantime, got a bowling alley, which is a guy had a heart attack, sold me a bowling alley. And the guy knew that the thing was going back. The area was changing from white to black, And so I was in there for about 4 years. After I got rid of the bowling alley, I went to get a job. I went to an Oldsmobile, to a Pontiac dealer. Again, got a job. And one day, a young girl walked into the dealership. She was maybe 20 years old, 22 maybe, beautiful girl. And she said, I want to buy a green Pontiac coupe. It's got to be spruce green. If you don't have it, tell me, I'm going to leave. So I looked in the dealership chart. We didn't have a green spruce, but I was driving one exactly. I says, you know, I got one that's got 2,000 miles. If you want, I'll show it to you. Oh, she said, yeah. I take her out to the parking lot, and I show her the car. She, oh, yeah, this is the one I want. So she's looking at the car, but she said, what's those little dings on your car? Oh, I said, people open a car door in the parking lot, put a little ding in there. She says, if you get it fixed, I'll buy the car. I sell her the car. And I'm looking at those little things that I had to get it fixed up, you know. She wanted it fixed up. And she drove away. Showed that I couldn't forget the thing. I said, got to put something there. And I came up, I'm going to put a molding on. Yeah, but I don't want to screw it in because I'm going to tape it on. And it's where it started. So I said, an angel came and bought my car. It was an angel. I never saw her again. As a rule, you sell a car, the people come back for this or that. I never saw her again, never saw that green car again, never saw her. I said, it was an angel that I sold that car to. I didn't see the wings. There was a book written that her son is going to have it published. I sold the car to an angel.
And so your book number 2 has been written, and we're waiting for a publisher. Now, what is that? What is the title again? I sold a car to an angel.
I sold the car to an angel, yeah.
Wow, what a great story to end our interview. And we're honored to hear your stories here on August 11th of 2020 with Alex Kunevicius and his family. Thank you for inviting us to your kitchen and sharing your adventures with us.
We got a big house here. I know we got a lake over here. I don't know if you saw. Did you?
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful place to to have your family visit you. Thank you, Tuesday at 7 audience. If you share, next week we'll go ahead and draw and send out to the winner a copy of Alex's book. Again, thank you again, and thank you, folks.